Hey everybody, these tape tips were originally recorded for YouTube, so occasionally an episode may have a few moments that are better suited for watching rather than just listening. The link to the YouTube video is in the show notes, and if you're on Spotify, you can choose to watch the video right there. Thanks. We, the collective climbing we, talk a lot about climbing better. Without fail, one major component of climbing improvement is very often glossed over. It's not more finger strength, it's not devastating power, it's not great technique, and it's not intense effort. This, by the way, is Sylvie.
All right. Hey everyone, I'm Sylvie.
We're going to be talking with her later. And now, don't get me wrong. All of these things that I mentioned are important, of course, but we already discussed them ad nauseum. They certainly are not glossed over. However, there's another thing in this photo that has the power to positively or negatively affect every single day of climbing for the rest of your career. I know, he's a little blurry, but we're going to talk to him too. And here's the craziest part of it. The person who might understand the importance of this skill better than anyone else on earth isn't even a climber. He's a hockey player. The great one, Wayne Gretzky. Let's get into it.
Gretzky to trailer, gives it to Gretzky, right side to McSorley, back in front to Gretzky, he scores!
On March 23rd, 1994, Wayne Gretzky scored his 802nd goal in the NHL to break Gordie Howe's career goals scored record. Now, I promise this is not a video about hockey. I've never played hockey in my life. Stay with me just a minute. The thing is, nearly 5 years earlier, he'd already taken the lead as the highest scoring NHL player of all time. So how does that work? Well, the NHL gives points for both goals and for assists. And when Wayne Gretzky broke the goals record, he had already been the career assist leader for nearly 8 years. The best at scoring goals and the best at helping other people score goals. I mean, can you imagine if climbing had a similar scoring system? If we got points for a confidence-inspiring spot or for giving up a working session on our project to belay a partner on a send of their season goal, then climbing would look pretty different. And the fact is, things like finger strength and power are incredibly important, but situationally can be rendered nearly useless. If a climb is big balancy slopers or a difficult slab or a stemming corner, finger strength and power may have little effect on your performance. You might have the most graceful technique, but on a powerful boulder, it may not help at all. Partners are the same. Some are only good in certain conditions, but a great partner transcends style and specifics. They, or you, are a performance asset every single time you climb together. And now, if you have great partners, consider yourself lucky. I hear from a lot of climbers that I consult with and coach that the single biggest hurdle to meeting their goals is finding good partners. They can get finger strength and power in the gym, but that partner, someone to consistently provide the assist, much harder to come by. Now, it should go without saying that if you expect to have great partners, it helps to be a great partner yourself. But what does that mean? And how do we do it? There's a long list, of course, that most of us already understand. A good partner should be trustworthy, safe, have good communication skills, be dependable and flexible, and provide positive support. Maybe most important is that they're adaptable. We all have this checklist of things that we look for. But in this video, we're going to go over a couple of often overlooked ways that focusing on partnership can actually improve your climbing performance, including a revelation that I find incredibly counterintuitive, a trap that many of the best partners fall into regularly, me included. But I wanted to pull in someone who's worked with a wide-ranging population of climbers and hear their thoughts as well. Question for you. Do you consider yourself a good partner?
Yeah, not to be prideful, but I do consider myself to be a good climbing partner.
That's Kyle O'Meara, lifelong climber, high-level boulder and sport climber who, most important for this conversation, has also been a coach at the Climbing Academy, an alternative high school that spends semesters in amazing climbing areas around the world, teaching kids about life through climbing and travel. Now, this is also Kyle, belaying Sylvie in Spain during a semester at TCA.
Yeah, crazy all the adventures it has taken me on so far, not just climbing, but coaching as well. So something that means a lot to me and something I hope to continue to invest in for years to come.
I wanted to talk to Kyle and students from the Climbing Academy because as part of their core values, TCA says they've adopted a team approach to a sport that is perceived as an individual endeavor. They claim that being part of a team that's centered around a dynamic and challenging sport helps students understand the value of working together and of making sacrifices that serve the community as a whole. To be clear, I love this mission statement, but can it go hand in hand with better climbing performance? Now, full transparency here. When I pitched this idea to the Climbing Academy, they were so confident that their mission makes better climbers as well as better partners and better humans that they decided to also support the making of this video and provided me with whatever I asked without ever asking to know how I was painting them. They really believe in this mission. You can learn more about them, what they do, and how to apply at the link in the description. But I also wanted to talk to Kyle because he's worked with high-level climbers as a youth team coach. So he understands the team dynamic, both inside and out, metaphorically and literally. What I wanted to know first is if some sort of teamwork was actually a part of the curriculum, or if the students at TCA were just going climbing like everyone else does.
A big topic of discussion that we had in TCA ongoing all the time, wherever we were, was climbing etiquette and our presence at the crag as a group, as a people. And, I kind of wanted to plant that seed of like, you want to be operating in a way at the crag where others looking in are like, wow, those guys are doing it right.
I often hear older climbers complain that mentorship is dead. It isn't. It may not be entirely keeping up with the number of people climbing, but it's alive and well. However, again, we're talking about performance here. And in that regard, there's a 2013 paper that I find really interesting. First, in 2006, a team led by Scott Carell analyzed several years of student data at the U.S. Air Force Academy to find out what peer group had the most impact on both academics and athletics. And since students are randomly assigned to one of 36 squadrons that eat, study, and train together for the school year, the researchers already had conveniently separated groups. What they found is that the current peer groups had the most significant positive impact on both academics and athletics. So, a sophomore likely got more from another sophomore than they did from a senior, freshman from another freshman. But they thought that they could narrow that down even further. So in 2011 and 2012, again at the U.S. Air Force Academy, they conducted a study on incoming freshmen. Hypothesis was that if they grouped together the lowest performers with the highest performers, then that would bring up the level of the lowest performers. Makes sense, right? So they seeded some squadrons with more low and more high performers, making room by moving the middle performers into pretty homogeneous squadrons of their own. At the end of the first year, it was clear that the plan had backfired. The lowest performers did worse. They actually sequestered themselves away from the high performers. They repeated it the next year, same result. They got worse. And in both cases, the high performers stayed the same. Then the researchers went back and looked at the middle performers in their homogeneous groups. They got better, the only students who did. And that's because of a concept in learning and sports psychology called the zone of proximal development. Essentially, the sweet spot for improvement. And this zone is really a gap that's easier to bridge with the guidance of a more knowledgeable other, such as a teacher or a more skilled peer. And looking at this particular research brings us to our key takeaway number 1, We can potentially improve faster if we regularly surround ourselves with climbers around our own ability level. So, even though there's been this Tim Ferrissification of everything that makes us want to learn from the absolute best at climbing, it may not actually be the most effective method. Even when it comes to technique and tactics and mindset, if you're climbing, say, 13A, you're more likely to learn from someone who's also climbing near that level, somewhere between 12C and 13C, than you are from Adamandra. So, because these kids at the Climbing Academy are also living, training, studying, and climbing together for an entire school year, I wanted to know what the general ability gap usually is, the groups that those students gravitated toward, and if the coaches did any general nudging.
There was a pretty widespread at the Climbing Academy, and I think it was like pretty well balanced. There wasn't like anyone who was, Adamandra and then like someone who had never climbed before. But there were groups. I think that there was a pretty heavy like concentration of people that were sort of in the middle, and then there were like a couple outliers on either end. That provided good for everybody because those kids in the middle group were the kids on the upper end that would maybe partner with the students that were on the lower end of the spectrum, like had a lot to offer those kids, and a lot of encouragement where they got to put themselves in their shoes and be like, man, you can't be discouraged by that. I was like that too last year. Like, proud coach moments was to hear those conversations happening and be like, wow, that's so cool that those kids are aware of that and offering this friendly encouragement based on their own experience or whatever. There was a pretty cool thing, I think, in the school where it was a neat activity to try to like partner with everybody. I had to make season goals or quarter goals or whatever. And a couple students were like, one of my goals, along with whatever this grade or whatever, was to partner with every person in the school. And I was like, what a cool goal. That's like awesome consequently, the first student who made that their goal, he was one of the better, more talented climbers there. And that, he had some number-based goals, but then he also had that like, yeah, I want to partner with everyone. I was like, nice, man, that's awesome. Proud coach moment right there.
Now, what Kyle's describing here is really important. This is exactly when you have the best chance of learning from someone who might be technically much better than you, when you're in a supportive environment where it's more about a shared experience and being able to understand what it's like on the other side of whatever struggle you're in. So while the decisions that predict success or failure at 515 are different than at 13A, the struggle itself really isn't all that different. This is also a great example of how research can guide us, but we can't just extrapolate one-to-one, particularly from the results that we see in the abstract. So even though you might get more from peers around your level, it doesn't mean you can't get something valuable from someone at a higher level, particularly if you have a meaningful connection with that person. But having a partner at around the same level as you definitely has some benefits. During her senior year at the Climbing Academy, spending a semester in Sierra, Sylvie learned some of the important lessons here and also started to key in on our next big takeaway about partnership.
We'd all been climbing over at El Petit, which is in one side of the canyon. And so me and a good friend, Lena, we decided to venture over to the other side of the canyon and try some things over there. There was this one route in particular that we were both quite keen to try, but 8A 13B was harder than anything either of us had maybe even tried at the time, but definitely harder than anything we'd sent. But anyway, so Lena goes and she's hanging draws on this thing, and the other thing that was special about this moment is nobody else was over there, which for Sierra, we later learned is quite rare. We go and she kind of just quests up hanging draws and makes it probably a little over halfway, which is where the crux is, and just gets shut down. And after maybe 30, 40 minutes, she's like, okay, you give a go. And then, like, if I don't get to the top of this now, like, we have to go, probably leave our draws for the day and then, like, bother someone else who can get them back. But still, like, you have this feeling of, like, okay, like, we gotta get to the top of this thing. Like, we set out to do this and, like, we gotta do it. Which is, I think, to be honest, what got me up the climb. And so, yeah, I had it a bit easier on the first half since I could steal all of Lena's beta, which is, again, another, like, truly awesome thing about climbing with someone at a similar level to you is you can, like, share all of these micro things that help you and learn from each other rather than, like, swapping between projects a grade apart.
See, Sylvie gets it. There's a unique balance between motivation and psychological safety when partnering up with someone who's at a similar level to yourself. If you're always just bailed out by your stronger partner when you're in over your head, then even the smallest hurdles start to feel over your head. But when faced with that same hurdle when climbing with someone around your level, you have the opportunity to be independent as a team.
I end up getting really psyched on this climb and trying it for probably the next 4 or 5 weeks. And Lena ends up getting psyched on a climb just like around the corner. And I remember this moment, belaying her, not on the send go, but a go where she was so freaking close. And just every part of me as the belayer, on the other hand, wanted nothing more than for her to send, even though we have this, again, not on the same route, but you have this kind of like, who's gonna send? You know, you have this like little bit of friendly competition, like, okay, like, let's go, like, do our projects. But belaying her, I really, like, every single part of me wanted her to stick that one move. And yeah, I think coming from a comp climbing background, so often, even just at practice or obviously at a competition, but you kind of have this like thought in the back of your head where it's like, okay, like, if this person gets zoned, great, but like, that means now that like, I'm a rank lower and like, I need to be better. And if they've done this, I need to do this too. I did for so many years. Every time I was there for an assist or watching a friend or a teammate succeed, it's like, now this means I have to do it, and I'm not as good if I don't do it, and I'm not as deserving if I don't do it, and like whatever, you have all these thoughts kind of like in the background, and like as much as you really want to be happy for this friend, there's always kind of something back there. Something Lena and I have talked a good bit about actually, but
now she's really onto something here. Having that partner around your level is important, but it can so easily induce feelings of competition, which for many climbers just feels bad. But, and this is an all caps but that a lot of you are going to find uncomfortable, competition can be a really powerful tool for improvement, specifically if, all caps again, the competition is close. That can be a really challenging feeling for people to untangle.
Lena sending her climb has nothing to do with me sending mine. Like, it's not a zero-sum game. You know?
Exactly. Which brings us to takeaway number 2. Embracing friendly competition is a proven way to raise the level of performance for everyone involved. Now I should start by saying this. In nearly every study of competition effects on a population, the majority of people improve their effort when competing. But there are always people who are unaffected and people who reduce their effort. It may not be for everyone, but if you can learn to harness it in a friendly way, it can make a big difference. When competition's framed as something relatively low stakes and low pressure, something like, let's see who can send 10 of this grade first, or even competing to send a specific boulder first, or whatever, and the competition is collaborative, that's a key here, then it does several things. Number 1, taps deeper into intrinsic motivation with less anxiety or fear of failure than we see in high-stakes situations, which means that climbers can push themselves harder without the same stress that impairs learning. Number 2, it often leads to more focused attention and faster decision-making. These high-engagement states accelerate motor learning and situational awareness far better than any drill can. And it can also lead to being a little more risky and creative in your decisions, risking failure for a tactic that has the potential for a big payoff. It's this versatility and adaptability that's key to a long and successful climbing career. Finally, it's the absolute best way to build resiliency. Learning to gracefully deal with both failure and success is an important emotional lesson that will ultimately allow you to try harder things with less baggage. And here's the thing. Even when you don't win the friendly competition, you come out with the assist. And in our system, that's points on the board. Necessary points. Now, near the end of our conversation, I asked Kyle about some of his proudest coach moments from TCA.
Certainly, I think some of the ones that stand out the most were just the ones that when someone was bold enough to really embrace a real challenge for themselves and spent an entire quarter focused on, according to the prompt of like, this is our project in quarter. I really want you to pick something that is a real big challenge. You may or may not do it. This is going to be emotional. You're going to get to the end either feeling the best, most victorious thing ever, or you might have to walk away with a near miss. And just seeing how, as a group, some of the students like really were centerpieces in that equation, where like everybody was rallied around them to try to fulfill this goal that they had. And some of them ended with success and a couple of them didn't. And I was the most proud of the couple individuals that really committed and tried to see it through and didn't quite connect all the dots in the end. And when they did that with, the whole school of partners behind them, and they did it with a great attitude and came out the other side being like, that was so cool. I thought all I wanted was to send that route, but in the end, it just was even better to not do it. Now I have this reason to return to Sierra, Spain, or Kalymnos, or whatever it was. I thought that those were the most special ones for me as a coach, to see like, wow, you embraced the assignment better than anyone. And I'm like really proud of you for being a good partner in pursuit of your own selfish pursuit, if that makes sense.
He's talking about Sylvie here. Because these conversations and recordings happen separately, none of us realized the connection until well after we'd recorded, when I finally pieced together the dots. And that just furthers my point. The stories of the assists persist as long as the stories of the sends. Sylvie didn't end up sending the route she was working on, the hardest route she'd ever tried. She came heartbreakingly close. But she's still smiling at the memories of watching Lena try hard on her route.
Just that feeling of wanting nothing more than for her to send was really, really special, and something that I've been lucky to feel many times since. And I think maybe the biggest thing that climbing outside and climbing with friends at TCA has taught me is that like it doesn't have to be you over them or them over you. It's really something that you can share.
Trying to force it to him if he's open. Here is Ovechkin, shoots, he scores! He scores! Number 895!
Wayne Gretzky was recently passed on the all-time goals scored list by a player named Alex Ovechkin. And Gretzky was at the game. In fact, he went to every game for weeks, waiting to see it happen. And he came out onto the ice to congratulate Ovechkin. Now, interestingly, to pass Gretzky, it took Ovechkin the exact same number of games that Gretzky played in his career. So Ovechkin is clearly the superior goal scorer. However, when we look at assists, he's over 1,200 behind. So on the all-time points list, there's no hope that he'll ever catch the great one. Now, you've heard this before. There's no I in team, but there is an I in climbing. Two of them, actually. There's this interesting dichotomy that I find when talking about partnership in climbing, because I feel like there has to be a certain level of selfishness, and that word is loaded, but I think there has to be a certain level of selfishness for you to climb really hard, whatever hard means to you. Do you agree with that?
I do, yeah. And I think that, the balance between selfishness and selflessness is something that, again, can change day to day. You can have this, let's say, month-long chapter where at the Climbing Academy, maybe we're in the same place for 1 month. and maybe the person that you're climbing with a lot has a project next to yours, and as a partner you kind of have to like recognize like, okay, maybe right now I get the back seat and I'm really excited for my partner. That almost becomes like my project, is seeing them succeed and like, being that supportive role for them.
And that's a key part of being a great partner, understanding the give and take, whether that means scheduling or emotional energy. If you want your partner to show up and elevate your performance, you have to be willing to show up and elevate theirs. Facilitate everything. You arrange the pads. You stick clip the rope. Know how they want to be encouraged, or if they just want silence. Be ready with the emotional energy they need, whether that's safety or psych or whatever. But I asked Kyle one final thing that led to him saying something that flipped this whole thing in a way that I didn't expect. I wanted to know that if climbing did have that sins plus assists leaderboard, where would he rank?
Oh man, I would think that I would score pretty high on those belays. I think maybe my biggest weakness as a climber might be that I have trouble being selfish in a partner situation, and I'm very good at like defaulting whatever I got going on for somebody else. And I think part of that is like the coach inside of me, and part of it is a little bit of a like, well, I get to climb all the time. I climb more than almost anyone I know. I'll get to try again later, whatever. Let's like focus on you. And I think part of that's true, but I do struggle to myself to be like, I'm going to be selfish. This is my time.
Man, that resonates with me. I am the same way. Not because people are being selfish, but because I'm trying to help the other people at the crag make sure that they do their thing. The people that I'm partnered with, I'm working so hard to be the good partner that I'm forgetting to be a little selfish.
And I think I'm starting to realize that that is part of being a good partner also, is I need to be better at taking, like set people up to have the assist, especially, when my partner is such a supportive person, like desperately wants nothing more than to be giving me an assist. And I'm like, no, maybe later.
So the fact that Wayne Gretzky was also a prolific goal scorer gave his teammates a chance to get really good at assists. In fact, Mark Messier and Paul Coffey, numbers 3 and 6 on the all-time assist list, were key teammates of Gretzky's who fed him many of his goals in his highest scoring years. It was his selfishness that helped them get on that list. When you look at it that way, selfishness becomes selfless. And that's our key takeaway number 3. When balanced, being selfish is actually being a good partner. It gives your partners the opportunity to be selfless, to get the assist. Which is why I'd rather be a Gretzky than an Ovechkin, because Gretzky did both. He wasn't just a great player, he was a great partner. And it's not just Gretzky. If we compare the leaderboards for goals and assists, we see several absolutely legendary names in the top 15 of both. Mario Lemieux, Gordie Howe, Jaromir Jagr, Mark Messier, and of course, Wayne Gretzky. And that's because the NHL incentivized being both selfish and selfless. But because we aren't hockey players, and we can't all have a coach like Kyle O'Meara or a team like the Climbing Academy, it's up to us to be careful to strike that balance for ourselves. And so even if it's just in our own minds, let's just assume from now on that climbing has a system where we get points for the sins and for the assists. I think we'll all be better for it. Special thanks to Sylvie and Kyle. And if you're in high school or a parent of a teenager and you want to know more about the Climbing Academy, whose goal is to enrich young lives by providing learning experiences that help students develop in character as well as academically and athletically, that link is right there in the description. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching or listening. In the show notes, you'll find related links, videos, and episodes, as well as how you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Current, where we connect the dots to help climbers learn, grow, and excel.